Well, welcome to the podcast. You know, guys, I normally go all around the world to get the best, but this time I've actually stayed in Australia. Yeah, that's a rarity. But I've gone to the most remote capital city in the world, Perth in Western Australia. I think it's actually quicker for me to get to Fiji or New Zealand than what it is to get to Perth in my own country. So, welcome to the podcast, Mike Warren. How are you?
I'm good, mate, but nowhere near as fun, mate. To go all the way to Perth is worthwhile. So come back over.
Yeah, but it's the midnight flight back. Anyone that
So
hasn't been to Perth from around the world, it is one of the most prettiest cities, one of the hottest cities,
it is.
and it's surrounded by beautiful wine country, absolutely magnificent desert. You've got to see it to believe it. And you can go swimming, but you don't go too far out because they don't feed the sharks there. So they have a habit of biting tourists.
Yeah, we
Would
grow
that
the
be about
sharks for
right?
tourists. Mate, we grow the sharks specifically for tourists, and we point them out so we know. So they're the ones. Go and get them because we have a reputation for some very hungry sharks up and down our coastline.
You do, you do. So did you always live in Perth?
Mate, I came over as a nipper when I was about three from the UK and spent
Yes.
most of my life in and around Perth or Australia. Travelled a
Yeah.
bit, but always come back. Your family's all here.
And did you study uni or just do school and go straight into
I,
corporate?
I did the mines bit. So in West Australia, particularly when I was sort of coming through the school system, you had a choice of going into the university system or going up
Yes.
into the mines. And I got into university, was going to be an engineer, and then decided
Mm.
I'd spend a year on the mines and never left. Spent the first 5 years of my life underground in a nickel mine, and then worked from there.
So that would have kept you fit.
Yeah, it wasn't a particularly pleasant atmosphere, but it was pretty physical work. Yes.
It would have been. It would have been. So I was reading here, you got out of the mines and all that, and you ended up in the corporate world.
I did.
And that's where the train sort of went off the tracks a little there. What happened there and where were you working?
Yeah, I had a stint in between the mines and corporate was in fitness.
Yep.
So I developed. I had a few health clubs in Perth and
Mm.
worked in the fitness industry. Got a passion for health, wellness, fitness, and I was in pretty good shape myself and worked with a bunch of trained a bunch of guys and got stuck into the nutrition side of things. So that was kind of my
Mm.
background in the wellness sector. And then I left that and I got into sales and sales training and speaking and then into consulting and developed a consulting business with my business partner. And we operate out of Singapore, head office in
Mm.
Singapore and in the UK and Australia. And that was, spent a fair bit of time in that market and sort of working in the corporate sector, consulting to some fairly large organisations globally. And did what a lot of guys do when they start traveling globally and work in the corporate sector, got stuck into the good food and the good wine and the shitty lifestyle that underpins the wellness.
I couldn't agree more. I was in the sales, corporate sales for probably 25 years. And when you're on the road and you're lonely, you're away from family and friends, you
Mm.
mostly do is you drink and eat.
You do, and it's I mean, not so much of a culture now with COVID has sort of made us rethink
Mm.
our wellness sort of priorities and our family priorities, but certainly for the last 10, 20 years, there was this sort of culture of decadence when you're in corporate
Mm.
to eat at the finest and drink with the best and sort of
Yes.
forget about sleep and don't worry about the consequences of the living high lifestyle. It was more important to put money in the bank and put the kids through a private school to look after your own wellness. And that's the undoing of many a corporate who spends their years sort of putting a bunch of money together only to find at 50, 55, their body gives up and they can no longer enjoy life.
Yeah, I was in the hospitality industry, so that was even worse and good. I
Absolutely.
mean, I did work for one out of all the companies, one incredible company called Guinness,
Right.
and they had an ethos of work hard, play hard, but they looked after their employees very well. I could
Mm,
not say a bad word about them.
mm.
Compared to some other companies I worked for, they were brilliant. But at the same time, we did our business with most of our top customers over a meal or over a beer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I
And
couldn't
then,
have
and
done my business without it.
no, and it's this vicious cycle where it's kind of the expectation is to first of all, work long hours. The expectation was to start early and be available early right through into the evening. So automatically you're underpinning sort of the family time, the sleep time, the wellness time, the time outside of work where you can look after yourself from a wellness perspective, which is, so already you're limiting the time you've got to spend on, your own wellness. And then there's the expectation to wine and dine and be social. And if you're not, you are ostracized, you do feel uncomfortable. And in a lot of cases, you don't climb the ladder with the boys because you don't play the game. And
Correct.
so that sort of, it's your own undoing.
I think my lowest is in on not looking after myself. I remember coming back from Canberra one day and it was a 3-hour drive back home. And a lot of my major customers were down there. And I was that tired, I pulled the car over, luckily, into a truck stop and fell asleep.
Wow.
And I was only an hour out of Canberra.
Yeah. Smart.
I woke up an hour and a half later.
Yes. Yeah.
I had the good mind to pull over into a safe spot. A lot of people don't. When they've burnt the candle, they're unhealthy and, far worse can happen. And I had to change things after that. You had a similar story. You really had a bit of a rough patch there for a while.
I did, yeah. I mean, it was a self-induced rough patch. So kudos to me for bending myself out of shape, literally. Around about sort of late 40s into the 50s, years of age, we were flying very high in the corporate world and drinking a lot. So drinking was sort of a significant part of the day, and so I got stuck into the booze. And the work we were doing at the time didn't involve a lot of face-to-face work. It was a lot of remote consulting, and so it allowed us to, when I say us, my business partner and I, to consume alcohol in the workplace quite happily because we were working in a small office environment. So we sort of got into a really vicious cycle of drinking during the work day and then socializing with clients and drinking again and then eating fancy food, and then add the layers of travel to that. There was a lot of international travel. So I kind of turned around at 50 and I was, probably 10, 15 kilos overweight. So I'd stacked on a bunch of weight, and I'd never been that big, and I had all the symptoms of being over fat and overweight, and the aches and the pains. And when you're 50, you can kind of double all the symptoms that you have when you're 30. And then, in addition to that, my family was slipping away, my kids were slipping away because I was spending a bunch of time on the road. And then I had this booze problem, which I sort of it wasn't sort of the addiction sort of as an alcoholic addiction, although I called myself an alcoholic simply because of the quantity of alcohol I was drinking at the time.
Yep.
And doing that 7 days a week. But it just became part of every day was booze, every day was food, and every day was sort of, debaucherizing my body and making my sort of deteriorating my wellness on a daily basis. And so I got to my 50th birthday and I did the quintessential line in the sand. That's it. Enough's enough. So a couple of things. I killed the corporate life. We pushed that to one side and said the corporate life isn't conducive to wellness.
It isn't, no.
It isn't. And so we sort of drew a line in the sand and said, that's not the way we're going to sort of direct the business. We pivoted the business, which is the fancy COVID word we love to use.
Now, yeah.
And and sort of had more of a wellness focus. So that was where Ditch the Dad Bod, which is the sort of the passion project I now spend my days doing, sort of started when I started initially working on myself. So getting myself back from being overweight, alcoholic, deconditioned, shit sleep, very poor lifestyle, poor relationships with the family and kids. All that stuff was sort of very prevalent. And it took me a couple of years, literally, to pull it back and pull myself out of the hole I dug. And at the end of that couple of years, there was a few mates who joined me on the journey. We'd run some challenges and things to get a bit of enthusiasm. And a few of the boys jumped in there and did the same thing. And we developed a bit of a formula around working with guys in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that was the start of the journey, sort of getting guys off their corporate treadmills and looking after their wellness.
But the first question I'm going to throw at you. I was at a conference, a real estate conference actually, about a month ago, and they had on stage all different successful real estate agents from around the country, right? And there was a Vivian Yap who's from Western Australia. She's one of the best known in the country, an amazing lady. But what I did notice with the guys is all the guys they had on stage were earning over $1 million a year in commission. So they had the people who walk the walk, talk the talk. All of them were fit. Didn't matter what age. They weren't fat. They weren't the alcoholic red nose.
Mm.
They were all fit. And then I looked around the room and I saw different people, and I like to people watch, and different people at different spots of their life and their weight and their health. So the first question I'm going to say to you is, can you be successful in business if you're not healthy within yourself as a male over 40?
I think you've got to say you can't be successful in business unless you're healthy, because I would challenge the guys who would stand there and say, I earn $1 million a year, and I own all these assets and I've got all this money and I've been successful. And my first challenge to them would be, how well do you sleep? How well do you eat? Do you exercise regularly? What are your relationships like? What's your fitness and health like? Because to me, I think that word success encompasses not just successful in business. I think if you say
yes, true,
you're successful, you cannot be successful and achieve what you want to achieve without tagging that your own physical wellness and the lifestyle you lead. Because I meet so many guys every day who do the I'm successful, they wave that bullshit flag, I'm successful.
Yep.
And then when you dig deep, hang on a sec, I'm not successful. I'm on my third marriage. I don't talk to my kids. I am overweight. I can't keep up with the grandkids. I don't only sleep 4 hours a night. I have all these physical conditions. So there's, to me, how can you put success in the sentence with your name if you don't consider wellness as part of the success formula?
So the next question is, say I brought to you a guy, and I'm not going to tell you his name, but I know a gentleman who is quite overweight. He is not healthy in many ways, and he should be far more successful than what he is. And I'm sure you get these clients all the time. Yes. How do you approach a guy like that? Because you've got to have a bit of tough love without them being a snowflake and running off and complaining about someone. How do you break them first, or shadow what their core beliefs are to get them to move? And what do you do with them once you've got them moving to get them on a journey of better health and better fitness?
Well, first of all, I guess I've learned over the years, and this takes me back to my fitness days, I no longer pursue guys who aren't ready, because you cannot change the guy who is not ready and his mate just says, look, my mate's fat, he's deconditioned, go and help him out. If that person's not ready,
that's true,
it's a waste. So you can't. So I now wait for blokes to come to me, and I'm in the position where when the bloke comes to me and says I need help, I've now got that first buy-in. So I call it their compelling why. So to me, the first thing I dig from them is, what is the compelling reason that if they don't make the changes that they're asking to make, what are the consequences of not making those changes? And it could be as severe as they're going to die, their partner's going to leave them, their kids, the relationship, their career path is going to be stifled. They're not going to be able to, get upstairs. They're not going to be able to sleep at night. Whatever their compelling why. So to answer your question, Rob, the first step is to dig really deep and pull out some painful, motivating, compelling whys. Because when the shit gets tough, when I'm asking them to train hard or eat different foods or sleep when they don't want to sleep, they've got to have those compelling whys front and center, because they've got to know what's going to drive them to get through any sort of program to get the results they want.
And so when you get a guy that's come to you and said, okay, Mike, help.
Yep.
I'm overweight. My wife's got the shits with me.
Yep.
I mean, they're the first ones to call you out, and quite often we don't listen to them enough as we should, because they're doing it from a place of love. My business partner is ready to kick me out of my own business that I started.
Yep.
What's your first thing? Is it fitness or is it mental attitude you've got to go with first to get
it's actually, So it's a combination. So the formula that I use is really simple. It's food, movement, sleep, mindset. Okay. So they're the 4 pillars that we always used, and they just seem to work. Yeah. So mindset is critical, because first of all, we need to understand their blockers and their motivators around wellness.
Yep.
There is some reason as to why the bloke standing in front of me is overweight, deconditioned, unwell, unsuccessful physically, hasn't achieved the wellness goal. So there's got to be a blocker in there somewhere that he's prioritized his kids or his family or his career, and he's let his wellness slip. That's not a bad thing, but it has consequences. And so many of the guys I meet have prioritized others before their own wellness, and then they turn around and they're unwell. Everyone else has been looked after, but they've forgotten about themselves.
How true.
And now they can't reap the rewards of all the hard work they've put in. So the first step is to understand their blockers and motivators, their compelling why, to get in their head and figure out what the hell they're doing. Why are they standing in front of me right now? Why weren't they there 6 months ago? Why will they not be there next year? So it's understanding the mindset. For the first change, we always focus on food. And the reason why, exercise is probably only going to give them 10 to 20% of any sort of physical results they want. Whereas for most guys, the reason they're unwell usually stems back in a great majority to the food they've eaten or the booze they've drunk.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there for a moment.
Sure.
I know we're going to go through the whole steps. A lot of us, when we get to 50, we watch what we eat, or we think we're eating the right food, but our belly still bloats.
Yep.
I'm being straight up with you here.
I know.
What are some of the good foods that someone over 50 should eat more of?
So I think there's no good foods, bad foods. I think that's that's a sort of it's very easy to point the fingers at the bad foods. I think when you're over 50, there's a couple of things that happen. First of all, we need to understand we can't eat what we used to eat when we were 20 and 30. That's kind of pretty obvious, but a lot of blokes just eat the same stuff they've always eaten.
Hamburgers, beer, pizza.
Yeah, and they start to get fat and they don't realise they need to change. We know the male body over 40 starts to lose the ability to utilise protein effectively. So what that simply means is that as we age, we need to increase or ensure that the amount of protein, meat, eggs, fish, protein sources, is increased or stabilised in our diet. Because if we don't do that, the muscle wastes, the body deconditions, and our metabolic health suffers. So one of the first things we do with guys over 40, 50, 60 is check that their protein levels are up at the right level, because most guys I meet don't eat enough protein regularly and their bodies suffer from that. And that's simply because they've always eaten it when they're 20, 30, 40, but now their body over 40 doesn't utilise it as well. And so their protein needs to be increased or improved. Otherwise, they start to suffer. Then there's I guess the biggest sort of area that I would see impacts guys over 40 is what I call shit carbs. So the carbohydrates, the shitty carbohydrates, the sugars, the pastas, the breads, the carbohydrates that we now know cause a significant amount of bloating and cause a significant amount of sort of that inflamed response in the male body over 40.
It just made me very sad.
And this doesn't mean cutting them out, but it does mean being very conscious of the impact for the male body that carbohydrates have, especially as we age. There are so many guys who the first thing that would happen when we start to clean up their foods, they don't talk about weight loss. They talk about, I'm now no longer bloated. I don't feel engorged. I can breathe better. I can sleep better. Because a lot of those inflammatory foods, those shitty sugars, those shitty carbs have inflamed their body. And the first thing they do is start to be uninflamed and feel a lot more comfortable. So that's
such
probably
a thing as good carbs?
There is. There's things like rice and there's things like sweet potatoes and there's healthy, pure foods that are good carbs. And some guys' bodies need carbs to thrive on. So I'm not a huge fan. Although the guys I work with, we strip out a lot of the initial dirty carbs and the shitty carbs to clean them up. When they finish losing the weight, they'll probably go back onto healthy carbs and live a long, happy life eating healthy carbs. We're just trying to remove the excess of unnecessary toxic carbs that we have a preference to, and that's usually because of the way we've been brought up. Our diets tend to be full of a lot of those type of carbs.
So now you've totally made me very upset and probably my wife very happy.
Happens.
Let's get back on track again. Let's go back to the food, the exercise, the mind.
I make a lot of guys unhappy and a lot of wives very happy when their husbands come back to them and they're fitter and healthier, and we save relationships and their kids are happy. So I'm very used to that, Rob. So it's okay.
Is there such a thing as good exercise and better?
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that we do, because we're dickheads as blokes,
Yes.
we tend to default. First of all, we're silly with our pride. So I mean, a lot of guys who are so frigging proud, it takes them forever to ask for help. We believe if we've been successful, you've been successful in business, and so you've been successful in business and used to knowing what to do. All of a sudden, you undergo this major project called wellness, and we have this dumbass sort of mindset that says that we should actually know what to do when it comes to wellness, just because we've been competent in every other area of our life. Even though if the plumbing broke at home, you'd call the plumber or the electrician, but we don't necessarily outsource to wellness. We outsource to other experts. So we automatically think, I can do this by myself. I can fix up my diet. I can know what exercise to do. And then the second stupid thing that a lot of guys do, and I was one of them, is you default back to what did you do in your 20s and 30s that worked? Well, I used to play squash or rugby, or used to ride, and so we tend to go back to some of these exercises that we loved when we were kids, when we were younger, but are totally inappropriate for the age and stage of our bodies now. Because we're overweight, we're slightly overage. So going back and playing squash as a 50-year-old fat bloke is not the smartest move. So to answer your question, is there the right exercise? Absolutely. We need resistance training. We need to work these muscles because as our bodies age, we lose strength. And that affects us in our posture. It affects us if we fall and injure ourselves. It affects us in flexibility, in balance, in mobility. So we need to do some sort of resistance type exercise, and we need to do some sort of cardiovascular exercise for our heart and lungs. So we need a program that it really is simple, but it's a lot easier for some guys to go, you know what, used to love rugby, so I'll go and join the local touch rugby team, and they go out there and do that, and they'll get some results, but it's not the ideal first step for a guy who hasn't exercised for 10 years to go back and play a sport that's going to put a lot more pressure on the body. It's a better approach to strengthen the body and increase the fitness in a structured, safe way than to be allowed to go and do those sports and other activities in a body that's more conditioned.
So what happened? A lot of guys like me and you who grew up playing football, playing cricket, doing a lot of that type of sport, you get to 55, 56, and you go to walk up the stairs and all of a sudden your knees go, no, not moving.
Yep.
And so then you use that as a belief to say to yourself, well, I can't go and do exercise because my knees are no good.
Yep.
That's a real life scenario.
Absolutely.
How do we get around it?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's that mindset of when we get into our 50s and 60s, we shouldn't have that mindset that I'm just getting older, so I can't do it. And that's, I have a lot of guys who just chalk up the inability to do physical activity to age. I would play rugby, but now I'm 40, I can't. Well, you should be able to play rugby at 40, but you need to be fitter and healthier to play it. You should be able to walk upstairs. You should be able to lift weights. You should be able to ride a bike. So there's this mindset of because I'm a certain age, therefore all these things on the wish list now get taken off because I'm of the age where it's not sensible to do these type of activities. Well, that's bullshit. Because we should be able to do all the activities, but there's some that you need to get in shape for. So if you want to play a team sport, if you want to play a competitive sport, that's great. And that's, for some people, they need that competition. They need that team environment to motivate them because they're not gym guys. But my argument is let's get you in the gym or let's get you doing some resistance training or something structured for 12 weeks so that you can go and play rugby and play squash and do something else you enjoy, but you're not going to hurt yourself and you won't injure yourself walking upstairs and you will be able to do it for the rest of your life. Because in reality, Rob, I'm saying to these guys, when you start exercising or when you start a wellness program at 40, 50 and 60s, please understand you're going to be exercising 3 to 4 times a week for the rest of your life. This isn't an intervention. We're not doing this for 12 weeks, then you put your feet up. If you're serious about wellness, you need to appreciate, like brushing your teeth and having a shower, most days you're going to be doing exercise. So you've got to pick things you're going to enjoy. You've got to be able to do this long term. And not everyone wants to get in a gym and do 2 weights every day or three times a week. So find things you want to do, but get yourself in the physical shape to be able to go and do them and enjoy them, and then live a long, happy life. That's the key.
I actually saw one day a group of men were having a beer, and they actually, to use an Australian term,
Yeah.
put shit on the guy that was fit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy for you to say, look how thin you are.
Yep. As if it happened by magic.
And I'm sitting there going, hang on a minute. This guy's actually made the effort. He used to be quite a large man, and he's still a large man, but he's fit.
Yeah. I mean,
and now you're bagging him for it.
Yeah.
I thought, you should go and look in the mirror. I nearly said
there still is this unfortunate the tall poppy culture of the Aussies, where we still put shit on guys who don't drink. You go into a social environment. If a bloke, the good thing these days, we have zero beers and zero alcohols, and it's becoming more comfortable. But 5 years ago, when I stopped drinking, 6 years ago, it was culturally unacceptable. I'd go to parties and stuff, and you would get shit put on you for not drinking, or you would get shit put on you if you were exercising regularly. So it is changing, but you're right. There still is this sort of desire to tear someone down because they've achieved something in their wellness space, rather than building yourself up or being motivated by it, saying, hey, I could do that too. I could be fit and healthy and still enjoy life and still be successful in business, but not necessarily drink alcohol every day and eat fairly healthy and all those things. So it's an interesting dynamic.
An alcoholic actually said to me that they love that there's zero beer. They can have a gin and tonic with zero alcohol. So they don't feel ostracized anymore, because they can stand at the table, at the pub, at the restaurant, have a wine, have a beer, have a white spirit and a mixer, and still be part of the group. Where before, as you just said, it was ostracized. I mean, my parents ran pubs. There were certain expectations.
Absolutely.
And my wife actually said the other day, she said she was watching the lifestyle shows. And she said, every time you see a lifestyle show with food in it, there's a glass of wine.
Yes.
She said, and she's not anti-drinking, mind you, she loves a drink, but she said, we have to change the perception that when you're eating food, you must drink alcohol because it's just not healthy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a poison, and we've all had it, and you can be a purist, but it's when it's so ingrained and so attached to everything we do, be it a meeting, be it a catch up, be it a meal. There is a culture where we couldn't do that without having some sort of alcohol. So and I have a lot of guys as strong as they are and successful they are in business. As clients, they struggle to have a business meeting without having a drink, and so they gravitate to the zero alcohol beers and wines because, as you said, it makes them feel like they can still participate in the meeting or the social engagement, but they're not bastardizing their wellness, but they're playing along. And so and these are successful men who run meetings and run companies, but they're still uncomfortable in their own skin, where they can't say to their clients or the guys who work for them, I'm not drinking, because of the backlash. So they still gravitate to the low alcohol beers and wines because that's their protection mechanism to still balance the wellness as well as the social or business requirements. So it's a tough gig out there.
Yeah. I love the name of your website about the Dad Bod because the best thing about marketing is your name has to say what it is.
Absolutely.
And anyone that goes on your website, which we're going to talk about in a moment, cannot not know what you are all about. It's in your face.
It is. The fascinating thing is I get this question all the time, the Dad Bod, what is the Dad Bod? And it's, it's fascinating because it came from a sort of a Hollywood movie where Dad Bod kind of sort of grew legs. Then it became sort of something that was good. The girls loved the Dad Bod. They loved the soft and cuddly guys. And sort of it's had this iteration, sort of the word Dad Bod. But, for me, it's the guys, it's nothing physical. And I started out thinking it was physical, but now I know it's not physical. The Dad Bod is just simply a guy, for me, usually in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, because that's the age when this stuff happens, who has spent time focusing on career, family, kids, invested their energy and their interest in developing that, and taken their foot off the accelerator when it comes to wellness. And by default, their sleep is shit. Their mindset around wellness has suffered. Their food has taken a hammering. They're probably drinking, and they're probably not exercising. Now, some guys by default will put on weight and be obviously fat and deconditioned, Some guys will just look horribly stressed and look, emaciated and sort of, underweight. But either way, their wellness isn't where it needs to be simply because they put their energy elsewhere. Then they've realized, hang on a second, if I want to live till I'm 70, 80, 90 and enjoy what I've created, I need to sort out my wellness. And so that dad bod is the catch-all for that guy who's just let their wellness suffer in preference to putting their energy elsewhere.
This will make you laugh. When my wife and I go on holidays, we lose weight.
It's interesting.
Now, someone said, why? And I said, well, we walk everywhere.
Yes.
We don't have our head buried in our phones or our laptops.
Yes.
And we're totally relaxed. We're not bored.
Yep.
Now, we normally go into Asia. Well, we go, we love going to the north of Australia and to Vietnam and Thailand and all those areas. And you can eat very, very healthy there. And yes, it is humid. And yes, you sweat out very much, very quickly. Do you think it's easier for someone to get healthier and lose weight if they are relaxed?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because so many people underestimate the impact of stress, which is obviously the reverse to being relaxed, the impact of stress on weight loss, muscle gain, physical fitness. I have, and one of the reasons we use the mindset pillar, and we in that pillar of the work we do with the guys, we talk about meditation, we talk about mindfulness, we talk about manifestation, we talk about structured breathing, we talk about cold exposure, we talk about all these wellness hacks and tools to develop a resilient mindset around stress. Because we have so many guys who struggle to physically get the results they want because their body is still in a highly stressed fight or flight mode. And their body's in this panic. I'm going to hold on to everything, including the fat and the muscle and everything. I'm going to hold on to everything until you relax. Then we go on holidays and we relax, and the body goes, thank God for that. I can now relax and I can let the fat go and I can let the digestion work and I can let my body. And so that's what happens. But so many guys underestimate the importance of managing stress as part of their wellness journey to get the physical results that they want.
So after listening to you, our listeners are going to be going, wow, I'm about to go and grab hold of my husband and shake the hell out of him and go, or the guy listening to it, how do they get in touch with you? I mean, this is going around the world. So how do people find you, Mike, and how do they get in touch and make a change?
What's fascinating, because I mean, probably half of my clients are overseas out of Aussie, which is interesting, because I have a bunch of people overseas who obviously have the same dad bod. So ditch the dad bod. If you Google, ditch the dad bod. We're on all the social media platforms and website.
And I'll put all the links up in the notes.
You can put the links up, but I mean, literally, it's just me, Rob. It's literally old me and my partner Lynn. So she's the expert behind the scenes who does all the research on what we do. But there's an online program. The guys can just go on and do an online program. That's a 12-week program. They can follow that. It's all my noise put into an online program. They can do one-to-one stuff with me. Or what a lot of guys do is they just listen to my noise, my videos. I do weekly and daily videos and podcasts and stuff. Yep. They don't have to pay anything. They can just listen to what we say and follow the process. And we have so many guys who get so much success just following the philosophy of food, movement, sleep, mindset, how to how to focus on those 4 different areas, how to work through a 12-week program. And they can get a lot of the direction they need. The bit they won't get, which is a lot of what the executives and the business people and the successful people need, is the kick up the arse with discipline and accountability. So
I have no issue with doing that.
So you and I could easily get information. That's easy. Just to Google. We can Google everything and get all the information. So it's not about food, movement, sleep, mindset information. There is a shitload of that out there. What the missing link is the accountability. When someone says, I need to make a change, they need to figure out who's going to hold them accountable and who's going to drive their discipline to get the results and follow the food, follow the movement, follow the sleep, and follow the mindset hacks and the processes. So that's either me or a coach or their partner or a training partner or a best mate. Someone needs to drive the discipline and accountability because that's the missing link, and that's the bit that someone needs to push them through the process. Information itself won't get them started. So it's finding that missing link to use the information and drive them through the process to get the results.
So I'm going to finish up with an interesting question.
Go for
If I booked you a table at Cottesloe Beach at one of the
Yes.
fine restaurants,
Yes.
and it's beautiful seafood, and I gave you two spots.
Yes.
One is someone you always wanted to talk to about fitness,
Yes.
and one you'd love to talk to about getting fit. Who
About
would you
me
pick?
getting fit, about them getting fit, or me
Yeah,
getting fit?
and about them getting fit. Because when anyone looks at the video, they've only got to look at you to say you're a fit so and so.
But I get pissed off with fitness people who I don't want to talk to fitness people. So if it's a
Good.
fitness person, I'm not too interested in them because I
Yep.
find, unfortunately, a lot of fitness people, they're the young kids who try and help old blokes like you and I, and don't really know. They've never, their balls haven't dropped, so they don't really know what's going on in life, and they're still trying to tell us what to do. So I get a bit frustrated with young people trying to work with guys in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So not interested in the fitness people. I love talking to blokes or ladies who have blokes who need help. So I'm always going to gravitate to any bloke who says, Mike, I need help. I need your advice, guidance, motivation, discipline. I'll sit on the beach in Cottesloe with them and talk for hours on getting them off their ass and fixing their life and getting them well again.
Mate, that is absolutely, I've loved talking to you today.
You too, mate. It's been a good chat.
Mate, it's been fantastic. Look, I know everyone around the world is going to look at this. I know there's a lady, especially in south of Italy, who is a fitness freak. And I know she's going to listen to this and she's going to give me a couple of stars and go, Rob, you finally got one that I like. But she's lovely too.
Awesome.
Mate, you are going to change people's lives. I know you already are doing. And I'll put the links up. And I say at the end of every one of our podcasts, have a groovy day.